There are so many tools out there, and it's quite confusing to know which ones to stick with. Are you with ChatGPT? Are you with Gemini? Are you with Claude? Are you with Qwen? Are you with DeepSeek? The truth is, it's hard to really know. So today I'm going to be talking about what that looks like specifically for you as a professional and consultant so you can make the right decision. So let's get straight into it. So the topic for today is stop switching AI tools, and here's how to pick your stack as a consultant. Now, the quote I've got here is consultants winning aren't the ones testing every single tool. They're the ones who picked their stack and went deep. And I think that is so true. I mean, I've gone deep with ChatGPT and I realized that actually there are some limitations with it, the sycophantic nature of it, i.e., yes, everything's great, and of course, and certainly, and then it gives me the negatives afterwards. Whereas something like Claude is a bit more upfront, straight to the point, all that kind of stuff there. It doesn't give you that fluff necessarily, but as we know already, all of these tools have flaws and they're not perfect by design because they're not human by design. So if we get deeper into some of the context side of things, and before we even do that, if you're interested in learning how to become a successful independent consultant and you're looking to go through a 6-week sprint of knowing how to do exactly that, showing you exactly what I've done, then click the link below to fill out the form. And if there's enough people, I'll definitely go ahead and do it. So here's a bit of the context. Now, there were 4 major releases in the last 90 days, okay, with OpenAI, with Google, and with Anthropic. And so we see here Opus 4.7, GPT 5.4, I think it's even 5.5 now, so that's even a change. And then Gemini 3.1, and we know that Gemini 4 is coming out very, very soon. And so all flagship tools now are roughly around £20 a month. Okay, so really price is not a differentiator. I think even ChatGPT now have got to a point where they've decided to even have a £7 tier model because they realized that their model just wasn't really cutting it out. Now, consultants need to evaluate more than just looking at features and stuff. They actually need to try stuff. They need to apply it to use cases. They need to apply it to their workflows. They need to build applications and tools to see how it fits. Now, the real question is what actually fits with your ecosystem. I'll talk more about that in a second. So whether you're utilizing the paid tools, the private tools that you need to pay for, the free tools, etc., there are so many different ways in which you can exploit the capabilities and tech of AI. So let's get into it. So section 1. So we're doing a mini comparison here, but this is based on my knowledge. You'll have your own sort of ideas centered around this. For me, Claude wins when it comes to strategy, any sort of copy, long documents. I think it has a 1 million context window, but you can check that for yourself. And there are plenty of different integrations that exist that make Claude such a great tool to use. Now, it doesn't mean that these other things can't do it, but Claude has just been known to do these things. ChatGPT was doing this before anyway. And of course, we know Gemini, Google has these integrations inbuilt, but we'll get into that in a second. Now, with GPT 5.5, I see it as a general purpose tool. So if I'm checking something quickly, if I want some processes or quick lists or whatever it may be, this is where I'll come to ChatGPT or OpenAI. It has a lot of integrations. There are plenty of integrations with OpenAI because it was the first. And so there are lots of different softwares and systems that want to connect with it. There's also Codex for Code. So that's ChatGPT's version of Claude Code. And actually from a technical coding standpoint, it does superb. So if you want it to build you tools and applications and stuff for your consulting business, then you can do that. Maybe you want to create a copy generator. Maybe you want to create a research tool. Maybe you want to create something that allows you to interpret reports. There are so many different things you can do. So actually comparing to Claude, it's cheaper on an API basis and you get more for your buck when it comes to tokens and all those different stuff there. So that's enough. If you don't want to change, if you don't want to flip over to Claude and you've been using ChatGPT for a while, actually Codex is pretty good because it uses the GPT 5.5 model, which is the latest model that's come out. Now, I forgot to say with Claude, it is superb when it comes to creating good code quality if you're building applications. But of course, it's more expensive to use. Now, if we come to Gemini, and obviously Gemini 4 is coming out soon, I think it's in May, it is integrated amongst its whole workspace. So you get it within the Gemini chat, you get it within Notebook LM, you get it in your Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, you get it in so many different types of Google systems and softwares. If you're a Google bud like me, especially if you've got Google on your phone, your laptop, your devices, it is superb. But again, it comes down to whether you use it on a day-to-day basis. For me, my stack right now is a split between Claude and Gemini. When it comes to generating actual images and extracting text and information like that, Gemini is second to none. I don't use Claude for that because it's going to use up tokens quite heavily. And I believe Gemini has a 2 million context window. So all things to consider. Of course, the reasoning benchmarks are quite similar. It goes up and down and everyone has their own biases, but I kind of really don't care about any of that stuff. It's what makes sense for what I'm trying to do. Now, the gap is smaller than the headlines make it out to be, because you see this release model and that release model and this release model, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to change. If you keep on changing, it's going to get confusing. Okay. So how do you make the decision? Well, let me give you some things to think about. So where does your client work happen? Does it happen within the Google interface? Does it happen within the Microsoft interface? So if it's within the Google interface, Gemini makes perfect sense. Just stick with Gemini. You can get a Gemini business account and you can connect it to all these different things. Of course, you can use Notebook LM as an example as your library for extracting a repository of information and generate podcasts or, presentations or documents or whatever it may be. If your client interface is a mix between Google and Microsoft, maybe it makes sense to use Claude or ChatGPT because they have a neat interface within them anyway. Sometimes I get Claude to do things that Gemini doesn't do as well. Okay. The second question to ask is, what type of work do you do most? If you're doing more strategy stuff, refining, thinking, all of that kind of stuff there, then possibly it's Claude for you. Claude may be the best thing for you to think about. Okay. And this is where I find Claude is quite useful. And of course, you don't want to, utilize anything that is of sensitive nature, etc., etc. But if you want to do high level thinking, then I would say definitely Claude. But then if you want something that's a bit more general purpose, ChatGPT is perfectly fine. And I say ChatGPT because people have been using ChatGPT for a very long time. It was the first. So there's no need to get rid of it. And of course, I talk about the sycophantic nature of it, where it says, yes, please, no, please, yes, whatever it may be. It sounds like a Ghanaian. I'm Ghanaian, by the way, British Ghanaian. Then you can change that based on how you create your system prompt and how you want it to be. So there are things to consider there. The third thing to think about is, how technical are you willing to get? So there are so many things to consider with this one. If you're in a situation where you're building applications, then I would say Claude is a great tool to use for that. I would also say Gemini is a great tool for that. So when it comes to Claude, you'd be using Claude Code for this, okay? And you may sort of integrate that with VS Code, okay, which is basically an IDE. I think it stands for Internal Development Environment or Integrated Development Environment. One of them. You can Google it yourself. Or you can use something like Anti-Gravity, which does that for you as well, which is Google's version of VS Code. And this is the container, this is the environment that allows you to produce these applications or these automations that make sense. Now, Claude also has something called, I think it's called Claude, I want to say module. And it also has Claude design as well. So there's all these additional things that you can do in terms of producing, let's say, templates and documents in the branding of said client or of your organization as a consultant or professional. Now, can ChatGPT do these things? It can do these things too. It just depends what you go deep in. Now, of course, I feel like Claude has a certain nuance that it understands. Gemini makes things look really nice and pretty. And I would say ChatGPT is a neat middle in between the two. So the reality is, it's best to commit to one primary tool, and then you can use others for specific tasks. Like I said to you before, Gemini is great for image creation and extracting text, and all that kind of stuff there. I also use it for building mini applications, but then Claude comes in when it comes to synthesizing information or strategy development or high level thinking. I do get it to do certain things on my computer in terms of organizing my folders or whatever it may be, or creating mini applications too, but I prefer to use Gemini for that. So these are things to consider, okay? Now, Next, you have to think about, so that this part here, yeah, was all centered around what tool you should use in terms of an AI tool that drives the agentic nature of whatever you're building or the workflow that you're using. But you have to think about your agentic layer too. And so in terms of your agentic layer, your automation layer, sorry, there are so many different things you consider. So there's Zapier, okay? Zapier is something that's been used for a very long time. The reality is, though, that even though it has the most integrations out of all of these different tools, you can use something like Make, which is cheaper, very similar to Zapier, has a lot of integrations as well. But if you want something that's even more cheaper, use NA10, and actually you get more finer control in terms of what you build. So there's a couple of things that I've built on NA10, such as a email categorization tool, such as a way for me to actually develop content from my YouTube video. There are so many things, how can I replace my task or high level thinking, so to speak. Of course, you can get Claude Code, Codex, or Anti-Gravity to build these different automations for you if you want to, okay? So remember, automation multiplies your AI. Don't use AI without it. Now, of course, without the whole AI scene, the sort of automations you may have seen outside of Zapier was email automation. So automations have been around for a while, but it's just whether you are ready to take it to the next level. And I'm telling you, this is the future. This is what's going to end up happening. Now, there's another thing I want to talk about is there is an opportunity to do things for free. So there's this tool called Ollama, and Ollama is basically a tool that allows you to hold open source AI tools. So basically AI tools that you can use for free. So if you download Ollama as an example, and you go onto the Ollama website and you download something called Gemma 4, it will give you the instructions to utilize what's known as the terminal to actually integrate Gemma 4, which is basically like Gemini, into Ollama. So basically you have your own free tool, AI tool on your laptop. And why does it work? Because it utilizes your laptop's server rather than, server hosted online. This is why you pay for it. And so really cool stuff. And so other tools you can use on the Ollama tool is Qwen. Okay, so Qwen's a really good tool. I think its model is inspired by, should we say, not ChatGPT, by Claude. So things to think about. You can also host NA10 locally for free. And of course, these things require you to be a bit more techie, but it's possible. And so there is nothing that you can't do that you can't reduce the cost or at least get close to zero. Okay. I've written here 85 to 90% of cloud performance for most consultant tasks can be done utilizing some of this stuff. Okay. Now that's a bit of an exaggeration, but we want to get to a point where we are, sort of automating things that are repetitive and actually using high level thinking for things that we need to think about. So again, the great thing about these tools is that nothing leaves your machine. It's not going to anyone else. You're literally using the tool to do the thinking via your own server on your laptop. Okay. Now, obviously, with some of these tools, they're not going to be as fast. So they're slow on complex reasoning, but they're best for private drafts and sensitive client work. So think about all of these different things there. So really to round this up here, some things you can think about for this week. Number one, pick your primary tool today. What is your primary tool that you use? And make a decision on that. Maybe you want to cancel the others if you don't have the money for it and go deep on that tool. Maybe you want to use their general chat or their agentic tools or their coding element. Try all of these different things. They all have this. They just may not be as neatly packaged as Claude, as an example. Second thing is build an automation. I would suggest that you use NA10 to build your automation. Now you'll see people that will say NA10 is dead. You can build everything on Claude or Codex or Anti-Gravity. I wouldn't say it's dead. I would say that, they're catching up with these tools. But if you want to see what you've actually built and what you can actually influence and what you actually need to change, then I think these tools are still pretty useful. So maybe you will use these general chats within the AI to help you build these tools. That's how I've done it, at least anyway. And number three, you can install Ollama. So this is a great way to get your own free ChatGPT or ChatGPT equivalent, so that you can again have it for free if need be, if you're gaining challenges. So hopefully that makes sense. Just something for you to think about. You should stop switching, pick your stack and go deep. The consultants winning in 2026 aren't the ones with the most tools, they're the ones with the best system. So remember, it's about trying things and seeing what works for you. I've really enjoyed this whole AI sort of like sprint or run. And sometimes it gets to a point where it's like, it's a bit overwhelming. It's almost like, what's the point of doing anything? But the reality is, you have to kind of like embrace it and use it alongside what you're doing. Obviously, you don't want to compromise sensitivity or privacy or any of that stuff there, but you do want to get to a point where you're synthesizing, integrating, and generating automations, agentic automations that makes life so much easier. Not just so much you can do more, but so that you can produce even more quality. It's the quality aspect that's more important. So see yourself as the orchestrator, see yourself as the architect, and see yourself as the project manager that can be more effective and be more productive. So hopefully that helps. What tools are you using? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more things centered around portfolio careers, consulting, anything centered around this career space, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.